From the years of 1945 to 1989, the United States engaged in the Cold War, a period of hostility and high tension with the other great post-World War II superpower, the USSR. Although the conflict fell just short of a hot war, the Cold War led to nearly 45 years of ideological conflict, a nuclear and conventional arms race, and made Afghanistan into one of the Cold War's battlegrounds where a war by proxy was fought. As a satellite state of the USSR, Afghanistan fell directly into the Soviet sphere of influence. Thus, it is unsurprising that in 1979, the government of Afghanistan underwent a coup in which the People's Democratic Party, or PDP, of Afghanistan seized power. The USSR secretly backed and encouraged Afghan communists even before the communist part of Afghanistan came to power through a military coup in 1978. Although there was no evidence that the USSR organized the coup, it sent advisors to Afghanistan in order to consolidate the power of the new communist regime under the leader Taraki. The USSR then supplied weapons and military advisors to the party in opposition to public armed resistance. A series of coups in the 1970s brought to power a pro-Soviet government that Moscow sought to protect in order to uphold the Brezhnev Doctrine, which stated that the leaders of satellite states were to be men who remained loyal. In 1979, a coup within the PDP led to the seizure of power by Hafizullah Amin. Under Amin, the PDP established numerous anti-Muslim policies that were met by the formation of the Mujahideen, a Muslim group in Afghanistan. Before long, the Mujahideen declared a jihad, or holy war, on Amin's government, who began to become progressively more dependent on aid from the USSR. Despite of this dependence on the Soviets, Amin began to make contact with the CIA and US government. Soon enough, the news of Amin's contact with the CIA led the USSR to invade Afghanistan and remove Amin from his position in favor of a more pro-Soviet man, Babrak Kemal. Officially, the Soviets did this to protect the Afghan revolution to communism from any bloodbaths that would ensue from vengeful feudal lords or religious zealots, and to prevent Afghanistan from regressing into a monarchy. Also, it was the belief of the USSR that the victory of the Mujahideen would involve American military involvement in Afghanistan. This was seen as an immense threat to the USSR's security because Afghanistan directly bordered the U.S., along with many other Western powers, considered the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan as the ultimate end to the détente. The right-wing view in the U.S. especially centered around their standpoint that the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was a prime example of the existence of Soviet expansionism. The reason as to why U.S. specifically retaliated in response to the USSR's actions was mostly to prevent communism from spreading. The U.S. saw the invasion as a threat to American security and believed it would be better to stop the Soviets in order to reduce superpower tension. Furthermore, Afghanistan was too close to the Persian Gulf. If the Soviets were able to successfully take over the Persian Gulf, they would be able to tamper with the shipping of Mid-Eastern oil to the West. The U.S. National Security stated that the USSR intended to eventually capture the Persian Gulf oil fields. As a result, President Carter immediately put a restriction on any further sale of U.S. advanced technology to the USSR. He announced that the U.S. would boycott the upcoming Olympics in Moscow, ended major grain sale, and withdrew the SALT II agreement, an extensive arms agreement that disadvantaged the U.S. from the Senate, refusing to approve it. The next step that led to Afghanistan becoming the Cold War battleground and to increasing tensions between the USSR and the U.S. was Carter's address in January 1980, known as the Carter Doctrine. The doctrine emphasized that the U.S. should protect the Persian Gulf region from outside forces with whatever force was necessary. Therefore, he asked the Congress to increase military spending and to reinstate conscription. What is the significance of the Carter Doctrine? The Carter Doctrine was a direct statement that the U.S. would do anything it needed to combat the USSR's power struggles in the Middle East, declared that attempts by any outside force to gain control of the Persian Gulf would constitute an assault on the vital interests of the United States, to be repelled by any means necessary. Everyone understood outside forces to be a thinly veiled reference to the Soviet Union. The Cold War then led to a hot war in Afghanistan that lasted from 1979 to 1988, fought by proxy. First, Carter worked to help the economy of Pakistan, a country that borders Afghanistan. Despite the fact that Pakistani military leader had overthrown the democratic government and killed the leader, he used Pakistan as the channel for U.S. weapons to get the weapons into the hands of the Mujahideen, or the rebel groups fighting the pro-Soviet government in Afghanistan. It was for the first time during the Cold War that the U.S. would supply arms to directly fight the USSR's forces, a freeze in relations. This was even further developed when Ronald Reagan was elected into office in 1982. In the Reagan Doctrine, which expressed Reagan's policies toward the Cold War in 1983, assistance was given to anti-communist insurgents and governments, such as the Mujahideen. Therefore, Afghanistan became a Cold War battleground between the pro-Soviet government and the U.S.-backed Mujahideen, because both the USSR and the U.S. fought for its political ideologies. By the late 1980s, the Mujahideen had battled the mighty Red Army to a stalemate. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev took over the Soviet Union, who believed that the USSR should focus on its domestic policy over foreign affairs. The next year, Afghanistan's leader changed to Dr. Mohammad Najibullah. Najibullah offered more lenient methods for negotiating and fighting insurgents while maintaining peace with the Islamic culture. By April 1988, negotiations were held between the Najibullah government and the insurgents. Other members who were present in the negotiations include Pakistan, the Soviet Union, and the United States, who acted as the guarantors of the whole process. In the end, the agreement was to have the Soviets withdraw troops by April 1989 and allow the refugees to return home. After 10 years, the Soviet-Afghan conflict came to an end. The Soviets withdrew their troops and changed their focus to domestic views. Afghanistan, as a battleground from 1979 to 1988, suffered devastating losses as a result of the Cold War. As many as 1.5 million Afghans died, including hundreds of thousands of civilians, out of a population of 15 million, and it resulted in almost 5 million refugees.